Hello, we're looking at bearing assemblies for a 65 Corvette, but they're basically the same from 1963 to 1982. And we're going to talk about setting them up so we have the proper clearance with the roller bearings. First thing we have to do is install races. And the way I install a race is I use these brass punches that are laying here, right here, as you can see. And I also have this bearing installation, or race installation tool that I use. And we hammer them in. The way I lay out the assemblies, this is the outer bearing. And I want to do the outer race first for the simple reason, if you grab the inner race or the wrong race to install, and you see how that just dropped right in? That's the inner race in the outer bearing. So we want to put this race in there. If you can easily mix it up the other way and try to install the outer race in the inner, because these two races are very close in size. You know, they're just a fractional different, and you could accidentally try to install the outer race in the inner bearing. So I always start with the outer. The other thing, how do we know left from right? Because there's a real easy way to tell, and lay them out like they're laid out here. This is, again, the outer side of the bearing assembly. This connects to the strut rod, and it faces down, so you put it towards you. And you've got two little holes where your shock mount goes. If you feel the one has a flat spot, the other one is round. The side that is round is the side that tells you left from right. So this is round on the right side, so this is the right side. And then what I do is I usually like to mark it. Now, I don't know if you can see that R. That tells me that's right. The other side, I'll mark left. Other parts that I have, these are the bearing spacers, and they vary slightly in length. So you can check them. And we have our assortment. I have an assortment of shims, and the thickest shim I have is 139 thousandths down here. The thinnest shim I have is 103, and there's a variety every 6 thousandths in between. I use these, you know, you want to select the shim that's going to properly fit your bearing assembly. The other parts, tools that I'm going to use, naturally the hammer for the races, and I've got this bearing setup tool, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes, and I've got a set of calipers so I can measure things, and a dial indicator for the mount, and I use that to tell my end play once the assembly is put together. So let's go off to the workshop and take a look at putting in these races, and then we can set these things up. Okay, we're in the workshop at my workbench, and I've put the assembly into the vise. It's in sturdy, and we'll select a race. That is the correct race because it doesn't drop in. This is the outer side again, not the inner. And what I do is I very gently take this punch, and well, I want to get it started. A lot of times I can just gently tap it slightly to get it started. I don't like to hit it with steel because you'll mess up. You can mess these up. Just gently tap these in until they're flush, and I work wherever it's hot, just driving it down, and you want to get it. Now, I I've got it pretty well flush here with the outer lip of this assembly. Oh, let's tighten that up a little bit. There we go. Okay, at this point, if I wanted to, if I didn't have this tool right here, I can tap it back and forth. You see how that slips? See how that slips? That's what happens. If you do that with a regular punch, you're going to score this. Because this is brass, it's not going to hurt it. So you can do it that way. And you can hit it. But you can drive them in that way eventually, but use brass. This tool that I made works out pretty good. Let's check it. Well, I got maybe a 1/4 of an inch to go. And I can feel it dropping in there. And let's see, I think I might be home. Hold on, let me just check. Yeah, I have a slight space. Let me get my light in here. Yeah, let me just give it a couple whacks for good luck. Tighten it. Tighten that. Because you want to drive these all the way down to the shoulder. You don't want to have any gap. And I'll check it again. Yeah, she's right up against the, I can see it. I don't know if you can see it with the thing, but she's right up against that lip. That's fully installed. It's time to do the other side. Well, we've installed the inner race. I didn't show it on a video. I didn't think you'd want to see the whole operation do exactly the same. And we're going to talk about the setup tool. And I'm going to set this up, just a mock-up, to show you what we're going to do. This is the outer bearing, and we'll grab a, I'm going to grab a 64 thousandths spacer. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to grab a very thin spacer. This is 103 thousandths, one of the thin ones. We're going to put on the outer bearing, this guy, and we're going to tighten it up. And I'll take a wrench. A wrench here. Give it a little snug. And I want you to see this. See how everything turns? That's a problem. And it's got looseness in here. These should be squeezed together. When I first started using this tool, it was driving me crazy. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't set up an assembly. And I'll show you how I fixed it. Loosen that up. I took an extra shim. I notched it so I wouldn't confuse it with the shim that I'm working with. And now I put that on there as a spacer. Put that together. And I assemble this. And I'll just do it by hand. And it's tight. These should squeeze together. That's good. So this spacer is needed, and it's on the outside of this inner bearing, so it'll have nothing to do with the setup. So let's set it up. I don't want to start with 103 thousandths because it's gonna. I'm gonna guess that that's gonna be way, way, way low. So I'm gonna put this back in the 103. Here's the 103 pouch, and I'll put it back in the 103 pouch because I don't think we're ever going to use that shim. That's a real small one. Now, let's start big. Reason is if you start small, you don't know how, and it's too tight, you don't know how small you are. Okay? You don't know if you're small by a couple thousandths or 10 thousandths, you know. So right here's 133. So let's start with 133 thousandths. It's on the large size. And we'll just put the 133 on there. And we'll set this up. Okay. I'll put the outer, the inner bearing in. I'll put the spacer and everything together. And snug it up. Okay. I can tell right now I've got too much. It's too big. But how much too big? Let's figure it out. Put my dial indicator on it. I know you can't read the dial indicator. I'm sorry about that. But I'll zero out my gauge. And it's about 12, 13 thousandths. The tolerance is 1 to 8 thousandths. So this is way out of tolerance. So we got to put a thinner shim in there, and I want to drop it by 10 thousandths or whatever. So let's drop it. Let's put a 121 in there and see how that works. So I'll take a 121, and I have the 133 here. Let me take this apart. Again, I want to say I have the tool at an angle so that I don't drop bearings, because if you had it tilted down, that bearing could fall on the floor and it would just ruin it. Okay, we'll take this one out. That's the extra one. I'll put this in here. Put that in there. That's the 121. It might be too tight. You know, it's a trial and error thing. Put our spacer. Big washer, little washer. Okay, now let me put this back into the 133 pouch. I know that was too big. Well, I can tell right now without tightening it, there's play, which is good. How much play, I don't know. Let's just, okay, after that good snug. Now there's a play, but I don't know if there's enough. Let's just see. Let's just see. I'll zero this out again. That's about 2 thousandths. You know, I'm going to call that good. I would prefer 3. Well, that's 1.5. It's 1.5. That's a little tighter than I like it. It's within tolerance, but I like to see it around 3. So what do I do? What do I do? I'm going to change the spacer. I have a thinner spacer, and I'm going to put a thicker shim in there and see how that works. Because right now it's only 1 thousandths. So let's take it apart. So if I go to the other shim, I'm going to add 6 thousandths. And where's that going to put me? Well, I got 1 now. It'll be 7 thousandths. That's too. and that's too much. So I want to be a little different. So I'll take this. Now I have a spacer here. Oh, here's a different one. Let's try this setup here. I have a different one set up there. So let's just see how that works. Okay, there's a 64. It's a different, and that also happens to be the shim is similar in size. Was the 122 or whatever. Okay, oops, I keep doing that. Forgot to put the bearing on. Put my shims in there, but I don't put the bearing in. There we go. Let's give it a snug and see how it works. Let's see. I can feel it has it feels like it has slightly more, believe it or not. Let's just tighten it up. We'll zero out the thing. No, this isn't. There we go. Three thousandths. I've got it at 3 thousandths even. I like that. That is perfect. Oh, we have it set up at 3 thousandths. Okay, there's one final thing I do, and it involves this piece of glass. Took a piece of quarter-inch glass and glued it to a piece of wood, and I'm going to show you what I use it for. Take the bearing assembly apart. Remember, we're at 3 thousandths. There's that. Okay. Now, what we're going to concentrate on, these are the two pieces that we're going to work on. And here's a piece of emery. Remember I said that these need to grip. Well, if you look at them real closely, there's a little roughness on the sides of these. And there's a little roughness on the shim. I'm going to use this as a real flat plane, and I'm going to file this down, starting off just like this. Until I have a nice smooth surface. I don't think you can see it, but I still have a little bit of roughness there. I'm not going to take much off. I mean, if I take a thousandth off, that'd be a huge amount. I think I might take a half a thousandth. Remember, we had 3 thousandths, so I got a tiny bit to play with. Okay, let's look. I like that. That's nice and shiny, and it's going to grip well. Do the other side. Well, it's got still a little spot there. It's going to make it flat, is really what it's going to do. You want it flat. That looks good. That's fine. Now we'll do the same thing with the spacer. If you noticed, I've put away everything else. I put away all the other spacers, all the other shims. I don't want to mix things up. That doesn't look bad. Let's do the other. Just like this. Just take it down a little bit. Now, take it down a little bit more. Now I'll just wipe these off. Get any. I'm going to wash everything before final assembly anyhow. I have to wash the bearings with, I like to use mineral spirits before I repack them and put everything together. When you pack this, you're going to lose, after it's all packed and greased and assembled, you very well could lose all your play. You're not going to see it because the grease will be in between parts. And if I didn't tell you, do not put these bearings together. Do not use this procedure when the bearings are greased. They have to be clean of grease. You want all the play you can get. So let's just put this together again and we'll do a final check. Okay, we'll put this in here. Got the bearing and the spacer. Put my tool spacer in there. The big washer, little washer, and the nut. And as I said, I should not have changed the tolerance very much at all, if any. A little bit. Just give it a snug. It's there. I can feel the play. And we're going to lock this in. This magnet tool is nice. I'll zero out my dial indicator. There we go. A little over 2 thousandths. I did lose a thousandths. Maybe a thousandths, half a thousandths. It's a little less than 3 thousandths now. You know what? That's good. What's going to happen is when you assemble, when you do the final assembly, you grease these up, put everything together. They're going to wear in a little bit. You're going to pick up an extra thousandths or two just from wear. Plus, you're going to pick up a little bit. They're going to expand a little bit because of heat. So that's why you want the 2 to 3 thousandths in there. You know, any little expansion that from heat, you know, is not going to be too tight. Some people say, oh, they get it down to a half a thousandths. I say, well, that's really too tight. You know, the point is you want good bearing life. And good bearing life, the bearings like to have a little bit of play. So we're going to be in good shape. So that's it for the bearing setup. The rest of the operation will be the assembly of the trailing arm and putting everything together.